Before we begin, tell us in the comments, could you forgive a king who realized the truth only after you were gone? Before the first chain struck the deck, Liora Vale already knew the kingdom had decided what kind of monster she was. The entire royal fleet had gathered beneath a sky swollen with storm clouds. 7 black warships formed a perfect circle around the execution vessel, their silver banners snapping in the wind like claws. Hundreds of soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder along the rails. Noble families watched from beneath embroidered canopies, protected from the rain, while the woman they had condemned stood barefoot in the open, her wrists bound in moon-blessed silver. No one looked at her as if she were human. They looked at her as if she had summoned the storm now tearing across the sea. Liora lifted her face into the rain. Her dark hair clung to her cheeks, and blood from a split lip ran down her chin. A heavy iron weight had been chained around her waist. Another circlet of tarnished silver rested crookedly upon her head, the ceremonial crown of a disgraced Luna. Once, that circlet had belonged to Queen. Now it was used to shame women before death. Commander Valor Thane stood before her in black naval armor. His cloak lashed behind him, and the long scar along his jaw gleamed white whenever lightning crossed the sky. To the kingdom, Valor was a hero. Songs praised him as the commander who had saved the western coast from the Tide Witches 20 years earlier. Liora remembered him differently. She remembered fire reflected in a child's eyes. She remembered her mother screaming. She remembered Valor's family crest above the men who burned the last Tide sanctuary to the waterline. "The charges have been heard," Valor announced. His voice carried easily across the storm. "Liora Vale, last surviving daughter of a fallen bloodline, you are accused of calling the tempest that destroyed 3 vessels of the Western Fleet. You are accused of using forbidden ocean magic. You are accused of placing a curse upon the blood of Alpha King Cassian Draven." At the king's name, every head turned toward the largest vessel in the circle. The Night Sovereign towered over the others, its black hull carved into the shape of a wolf cutting through waves. Alpha King Cassian stood alone at the upper railing, rain streaming from his dark hair and silver-trimmed coat. He wore no crown. He did not need one. The silence surrounding him was heavier than any jewel. He was feared from the northern forest to the southern cliffs. He was the king whose command could force an army of wolves to its knees, and he had not spoken once in Liora's defense. That silence wounded her more deeply than the silver chain. Valor lifted a sealed scroll. "The Royal Council has judged you guilty." "The Royal Council judged me before the first ship sank," Liora said. Her voice was not loud, but the wind carried it across the deck. Several nobles shifted uneasily. Valor's pale eyes narrowed. "Your bloodline once commanded these waters. Do you expect us to believe the sea destroyed royal ships without your hand? My bloodline protected these waters. Your bloodline betrayed the crown. My bloodline died protecting it." A murmur moved through the fleet. Liora looked past Valor toward Cassian. He had gone completely still. She continued, "The storm that destroyed the king's childhood fleet was not summoned to kill him." Valor stepped closer. "Be silent. My mother called the sea wolves to save a royal child trapped beneath a burning mast." The rain seemed to stop between one heartbeat and the next. Cassian's hands tightened around the railing. Valor struck Liora across the face. The blow sent her to one knee. Silver bit into her wrists. Laughter did not follow. Even the cruelest members of the court had become too uneasy for that. Valor seized her hair and forced her head back. His mouth came close to her ear. "You should have let that memory drown with your family." Liora's pain vanished beneath a colder realization. He was afraid, not angry, afraid. Valor's fear answered every question. Liora looked at Cassian again. "Ask him," she called. "Ask your commander why your father's fleet sailed away while my mother stayed behind to save you." Valor dragged her upright. "The sentence will be carried out." 2 soldiers approached. The younger one could not have seen 20 winters. His hands shook as he reached for the chain around her waist. Liora studied his face. "What is your name?" He stared at her. "Your name?" "Edrin," he whispered. "Do not spend your life pretending obedience made you innocent, Edrin." His lips parted. The older soldier pulled him back sharply. Valor pointed toward the edge of the deck. "Throw her over." The soldiers moved her forward. Liora reached the railing. For one brief moment, She looked directly at Cassian. She did not beg. She would not give his court the pleasure of seeing her plead for a life they had already decided was worthless. But she let him see the wound he had created, not by hating her, by almost believing her, then choosing silence. Cassian's expression cracked. His lips parted. So late. The soldiers pushed. Liora fell backward into the storm. The cold struck like a blade through her lungs. The iron weight dragged her beneath the surface before she could cry out. The world above vanished behind boiling darkness. Her chains pulled her deeper while bubbles tore from her mouth. The royal fleet became a ring of shadows overhead. She tried to kick, but the weight twisted her sideways. Moon-blessed silver burned through her skin, designed to silence forbidden blood. Every movement sent fire up her arm. Her lungs began to convulse. The last of her breath escaped. Darkness pressed closer. Then something howled beneath her. The sound did not travel through the water. It traveled through her bone. Liora opened her eyes. Two enormous pale lights appeared below. At first, she believed they were moons reflected in the deep. Then they blinked. A vast silver muzzle emerged from the darkness. The creature was larger than any ship in the fleet. Its fur flowed like moonlight beneath water, each strand dissolving into currents. Ancient scars crossed its face. Broken chains hung from its spectral neck. A sea wolf, one of the guardians her mother had described in whisper. The creature rose until its eyes were level with hers. A voice entered her mind. Daughter of the last tide, why do you return to us in chain? Liora tried to answer. Water flooded her mouth. The wolf pressed its forehead against hers. The sea rushed into her lung. She waited for death. Instead, she breathed. The water became air inside her body, cold and luminous. Power moved through her veins with enough force to make her back arc. Then the memories came. Her mother stood upon a burning ship, both arms raised toward the storm. Giant wolves raced across the waves, carrying wounded sailors toward safety. A small, dark-haired boy clung to a broken mast while fire consumed the vessel around him. Cassian, 7 years old, terrified. Liora's mother reached him first. She sang breath into his lungs and placed him between the jaws of a silver sea wolf. Then a man stepped behind her, Valor's father. His sword flashed. Her mother's blood struck the water. The memory chain. The silver chains around her wrists began to crack. The ancient wolf's voice entered her again. What name do you offer the sea? Liora remembered her mother's final warning. When the sea asks your name, do not answer with the one men gave you. Her lips moved beneath the water. I am Liora Avalune, daughter of Ceres, blood of the drowned crown. The ocean answered. Blue light exploded from her eyes. The chains shattered. Far above, every ship in the royal fleet lurched as something enormous moved beneath them. On the Night Sovereign, Cassian staggered away from the railing. Pain tore through his chest. His wolf, Rydian, had been dying for years. Once, the great black beast had been strong enough to challenge entire packs. Now its presence inside Cassian had faded to a weak, distant pulse. But when Liora entered the sea, Rydian had awakened with a howl so violent that Cassian nearly shifted where he stood. Then the wolf began clawing toward the water. Cassian gripped the railing. What did you do? He demanded. Valor turned from the place where Liora had vanished. I carried out the council's sentence. I had not approved it. You did not stop it. The words struck with cruel precision. Cassian looked down at the black waves. Nothing remained of her. No hand, no broken chain, no body. Only rain. Valor stepped closer. The fleet needed certainty. 300 sailors died because of that woman. You do not know that. I know what her bloodline did. Cassian faced him. Do you? Something shifted in Valor's expression. There and gone. Fear. Cassian felt Rydian again. Not merely awake now, but grieving. The wolf's pain rolled through him with such force that his knees almost gave way. Liora's final look returned to him. She had not asked him to save her. That was what made it unbearable. She had already understood he would not. 3 nights passed without a body. On the first night, sailors heard claws scraping beneath the hull. On the second, every wolf aboard the Night Sovereign woke at the same hour and faced west, their eyes glowing in the dark. On the third, the sea became perfectly still. No wind touched the sails. No wave struck the ship. A pale fog rose around the fleet. Cassian stood alone at the bow, unable to sleep. Valor had ordered the ships east toward the capital, but each mile away from the execution site made the pain beneath Cassian's ribs grow worse. Then he heard singing, a woman's voice. Lo, distant, impossible. The song moved beneath the Night Sovereign. Cassian's blood went cold. Sailors emerged from below deck. Some clutched swords, others whispered prayers. The song grew louder. It was not a mourning song. It was a summon. Moonlight appeared beneath the ship. A vast shape passed under the hull, larger than the vessel itself. The Night Sovereign lifted as though carried upon the back of something alive. Men screamed. Warning horns sounded across the fleet. Cassian ran to the railing. Beneath the surface, a woman floated in the silver dark. Her hair spread around her like ink. Broken chains drifted from her wrists. Her eyes were closed. Liora, Cassian breathed. Her eyes opened. They burned blue. The sea erupted. Liora rose from the water upon a pillar of silver foam. Behind her, enormous wolves emerged from the ocean, one after another, their spectral bodies towering above the warships. One placed its paws upon the waves. Another lifted its head beside the Night Sovereign, its eyes level with the mast. Every wolf in human skin fell silent. Then, across 7 royal ships, they bowed. Cassian felt Rydian bow inside him. Liora looked up at the king who had failed her. There was no triumph in her face, only sorrow. Valor drew his sword. Archers, he shouted, kill her. Cassian turned. His command struck the fleet like thunder. Lower every weapon. No one moved. Valor stared at him. She has summoned an army. Cassian looked at the ancient wolves surrounding the woman he had allowed the kingdom to drown. No, he said. She has summoned witnesses. Liora lifted one broken chain. The water beneath the fleet began to glow, and in that light, the dead opened their memories. The sea showed them a child drowning beneath a burning sky. Cassian saw himself at 7 years old, clinging to a broken mast while royal ships turned away from the wreckage. Flames devoured the sails above him. Oil burned across the water. Men screamed in the darkness, but his father's vessel kept moving toward safety. Then a woman appeared through the smoke. Her dark hair streamed behind her. Moonlight burned beneath her skin. She lifted both hands, and wolves made of silver water rose around the sinking ships. One carried wounded sailors upon its back. Another tore through burning wreckage to reach trapped soldiers. The woman reached Cassian, Liora's mother. She pressed her mouth near his and sang breath back into his lungs. Then she placed him gently between the jaws of a sea wolf and ordered the creature to carry him toward shore. Cassian watched the memory in horror. His father had told him the tide lunas caused the destruction. He had believed that lie for 20 years. The water shifted. Another image formed. Liora's mother stood upon the remains of the burning deck, exhausted and bleeding. Valor's father approached from behind. The silver crest of House Thane shone upon his armor. She turned too late. His sword entered beneath her ribs. The memory trembled as her blood touched the sea. Then the elder Thane leaned close to her dying face. The crown cannot owe its survival to your kind. The entire fleet heard him. A cry of disbelief moved across the ships. Valor's face became stone. False visions, he shouted. The witch is poisoning your minds. The sea changed again. Now Valor himself stood inside the royal map chamber only weeks earlier. He poured black powder into a ceremonial basin used to bless the western ships. A storm rune flared beneath his fingers. Beside him stood High Priestess Maevra of the Old Moon Temple. If the storm takes too few vessels, she said, the council will not accept the tide threat. Valor answered without hesitation. Then it must take enough. A silence heavier than thunder fell across the fleet. Cassian turned toward the commander. 300 sailors had died. Valor had not merely accused Liora of their deaths. He had created those deaths so the kingdom would fear her blood. Valor's hand moved. He drew a narrow throwing blade from beneath his cloak and hurled it toward Liora. Cassian shouted her name. The weapon crossed the space between ship and sea. The largest spectral wolf snapped its jaws shut. Metal shattered between silver teeth. The creature roared. Every vessel tilted beneath the force. Men dropped to their knees. Lanterns burst. The fog split apart as enormous shapes moved through the water below. Liora remained above the sea, but the blue light in her eyes began to flicker. Her body swayed upon the pillar of water. Blood ran from the wounds around her wrists. Cassian saw the truth before anyone else. She was not controlling the sea without cost. The sea was holding her up because her own strength was almost gone. "Bring the ship toward her," he ordered. The helmsman stared at him. "Your Majesty, those creatures." "Move." Valor stepped between Cassian and the wheel. "She has bewitched you." Cassian's gaze settled upon him. "You murdered my sailors. I preserved your kingdom by drowning men who trusted you, by giving the Pax an enemy before they turned upon the throne." The nobles on nearby ships listened. Valor no longer tried to deny the storm rune. He was defending it. That frightened Cassian more than a confession would have. Valor continued. "The Western Pax had begun refusing taxes. The fleet questioned your strength. The council already suspected your wolf was failing." Cassian went still. Valor smiled faintly. "Yes, I know about Ridian." Whispers spread through the sailor. Cassian's dying wolf had been the crown's most dangerous secret. A Stormfang king without a wolf could not hold the throne. Valor raised his voice so every ship could hear. "How many months has it been since your king completed a shift? How many times has he sent soldiers to battle while hiding his weakness behind palace walls?" The deck seemed to narrow around Cassian. Valor had prepared this moment carefully. Liora's execution had never been only about killing her. Valor had expected her power to awaken. He needed the sea wolves to appear before the fleet, so he could expose Cassian's failing wolf and claim the kingdom required a stronger ruler. Cassian looked toward Liora. She was sinking. The pillar beneath her collapsed. Her body vanished beneath the surface. He climbed onto the railing. Valor seized his arm. "If you enter that water, the fleet will know she owns you." Cassian looked down at the hand gripping him. Valor released it. "You will lose the throne," the commander warned. Cassian removed his sword belt and coat. "I already lost the right to call myself king when I watched her fall the first time." Then he jumped. The sea struck him with brutal cold. Armor dragged him downward. Burning lungs, black water, and distant moonlight pulled him back into the childhood memory he had spent years trying to bury. Above him, the night sovereign became a shadow. Below him, pale wolves moved through the deep. He found Liora suspended between them. Her eyes were closed. Her broken chains floated around her, but one silver length remained wrapped around her ankle. It was connected to the iron weight that had dragged her into the dark 3 nights earlier. Cassian swam toward her. The moment his hand closed around the chain, silver fire burned through his palm. Agony tore across his chest. Ridian screamed inside him. This was not ordinary moon-blessed metal. The chain had been forged to sever ancient bond. Liora opened her eyes. She saw his hand around the silver. Fear moved across her face. Her voice entered his mind through the water. "Release it." Cassian pulled harder. The chain did not move. "It will kill your wolf." His vision blurred from pain. He answered through the strange current connecting them. "He is already dying." Liora pushed against his chest. "Then do not make me the reason he dies now." Even beneath the sea, after everything his kingdom had done to her, she was trying to save him. The shame of it burned more fiercely than the chain. Cassian wrapped both hands around the silver. "I should have stopped them." Liora stared at him. His blood drifted between them. "I should have listened before you needed the sea to prove your innocence." Her expression hardened. "Regret will not break this chain." "No." Cassian braced his feet against the iron weight. "But I will." He pulled. Silver cut through his palms. Darkness exploded across his vision. Ridian's presence weakened until Cassian felt an emptiness inside his soul, where the wolf had lived for most of his life. Then Liora placed her hand over his heart. Blue light passed through his body. The sea opened another memory between them. Cassian was a child again, freezing beneath the burning fleet. Liora's mother touched his chest and gave him breath. Her power entered him through the water, but the memory did not end when the sea wolf carried him away. Cassian felt something remain inside him, a silver current winding around Ridian's young spirit. A bond, not a mate bond, an ancient protection between the Tide bloodline and the royal wolf. Then his father ordered the Tide Lunas slaughtered. The protection was torn apart before it could fully settle. Ridian had been dying ever since. Cassian opened his eyes. Liora had seen the same truth. Her family's destruction had not only buried history, it had broken his wolf. The chain around her ankle was made from the same severing magic. Cassian pulled again. This time, Liora joined him. Blue power moved from her blood into the silver. Black strength rose from Cassian's dying wolf. Ridian gathered the last of himself, and struck the chain from within Cassian's soul. The silver links shattered. A shock wave moved through the ocean. The sea wolves turned as one. Cassian caught Liora around the waist. A current seized them and carried them toward the surface. They broke through beside the Night Sovereign. Ropes fell from the deck. The largest sea wolf lowered its enormous head. Cassian placed Liora across its spectral muzzle, and the creature lifted her toward the ship with impossible gentleness. Soldiers pulled her aboard. Cassian climbed after her. The moment his boots touched the deck, swords surrounded him. Not royal guards, Valor's men. Liora lay unconscious beside the mast, water flowing from her torn clothes. The blue light around her wounds had dimmed. Captain Rowan Dacre, commander of Cassian's personal guard, stood with a sword at his throat. 3 of Valor's soldiers held him in place. Valor had taken control of the Night Sovereign while the king was beneath the sea. "You have endangered the fleet for a forbidden woman," Valor said. Cassian pushed wet hair from his eyes. Blood ran freely from his burned hand. "You created the storm to prevent a greater war. You killed your own men. I sacrificed 300 so 30,000 would not die in civil conflict." A murmur of horror moved across the deck. Valor lifted his voice. The Western Pax were already preparing rebellion. The council questioned Cassian's ability to rule. His wolf was dying, and everyone in this fleet would have suffered when rival alphas discovered it. Cassian stepped toward him. The swords around him tightened. Valor did not retreat. "I gave the kingdom unity," he said. "A common enemy, a bloodline already condemned by history. You gave them a lie. Kingdoms are built upon useful lies." Cassian's command pressed outward. The wolves inside the soldiers reacted instantly. Several men lowered their weapons without meaning to, but the pressure was weaker than it should have been. Rydian had spent the last of his strength breaking Liora's chain. Valor saw it. "Shift," he said. Cassian remained still. "Show them their king." No one moved. Liora stirred beside the mast. Her eyes opened slowly. Cassian felt relief so sharp it almost weakened him. Valor pointed toward her. "She has awakened dead creatures, infected this fleet with forbidden memories, and destroyed what remained of your wolf. Give her to me, and I may still preserve the crown." Liora pushed herself upright. She looked pale enough to disappear into the fog, but she did not hide behind Cassian. "The storm was bait," she said. Valor's face tightened. "You needed my power to awaken publicly. If I drowned without revealing it, you would lose the monster you planned to place beside the king's weakness." Valor said nothing. Liora continued. "You did not fear my bloodline because it could destroy the kingdom. You feared it because the sea remembers what your family did." One of Valor's soldiers looked at the commander. Doubt had begun. Valor drew his sword. Cassian moved between them. "You will not touch her. Then prove you are still capable of stopping me." Valor attacked. Cassian caught his wrist before the blade reached Liora. They struggled for one violent second. Then Cassian's body betrayed him. Pain split across his chest. He fell to one knee. Valor struck him across the face with the hilt of his sword. The king collapsed. A gasp moved through the fleet. Cassian tried to summon Rydian. Nothing answered. Valor stood over him. "There is your Alpha King." The words traveled from ship to ship. A king on his knees. No wolf. No command strong enough to protect him. Liora stepped in front of Cassian. She had no weapon, only broken chains hanging from her wrists. Valor laughed quietly. "You intend to defend him?" Liora looked down at Cassian. He expected hatred in her eyes. He would have deserved it. Instead, he saw fury, not because he had failed to protect himself, because Valor had reduced a dying wolf to political proof. Liora faced the commander. "Touch him," she said, "and the ocean will remember every man your house has murdered." Valor glanced toward the sea. The spectral wolves remained around the fleet, but their forms had begun to fade. Liora's power was exhausted. He understood. So the last tide Luna is empty. He crossed the deck and seized her by the throat. Cassian forced himself onto one arm. "Release her." Valor tightened his grip. Liora clawed at his wrist, but her body had no strength left. Valor leaned near her. "Your mother looked at me with the same defiance when my father cut out her tongue." Something changed in Liora's face. Grief moved through her so deeply that the sea around the fleet went still. Cassian heard the confession. So did Rydian. The dying wolf rose, not from power, from rage. A growl began inside Cassian's chest. Valor looked toward him. Cassian lifted his head. His eyes had turned black. "Release her," Valor did not. Cassian shifted. The transformation tore through him like an execution. Bones cracked. Armor split. Black fur erupted across his body. Within seconds, Rydian stood upon the deck. The great wolf was larger than any beast aboard the fleet, but silver fractures covered his body. Darkness leaked through wounds along his ribs. His fur clung to a frame far too thin for his size. The shift was killing him. Valor released Liora and stepped back. Rydian lunged. The commander threw himself behind the mast. His soldiers attacked from both sides, driving silver spears into the wolf's shoulders. Rydian roared. The sound shook every sail. Liora stumbled toward him. Cassian's wolf turned, maddened by pain, and opened his jaws. She stopped directly before his teeth. The fleet watched in horror. If Rydian attacked, one bite would tear her apart. Liora raised her bleeding hand. "Your wolf remembers my mother," she whispered. Rydian growled. "And mine remembers you." Her palm touched his muzzle. Blue light spread through his black fur. For one heartbeat, the fractures across his body began to close. Then the entire sea beneath the fleet opened like an enormous eye. A voice older than the kingdom rose from the deep. "Bring the broken king to the drowned crown before the next moonrise." Every sailor heard it. Liora looked toward the western horizon. Cassian returned to human form and collapsed at her feet. She knelt beside him, pressing both hands over his failing heart. "What happens if we do not reach it?" Captain Rowan asked. The sea answered before Liora could. "The last royal wolf will die." Then another voice entered only Liora's mind. "And when he dies, the final memory of your mother dies with him." The Night Sovereign turned west before sunrise. No one aboard questioned Liora's command when she ordered the sails raised. The men who had watched her fall in chains now avoided her eyes as they carried Cassian below deck. Some feared her, some feared what they had helped do. Others stared at the sea wolves moving beneath the hull as if waiting for punishment. Liora wanted none of their fear. She wanted Cassian to breathe. He lay unconscious in his cabin, his skin burning with fever. The silver wounds left by his final shift had vanished from the surface, but dark lines spread beneath his chest like cracks beneath ice. Liora placed her palm over his heart. Rydian was still there, barely. The great wolf's presence flickered inside Cassian like a flame starving for air. Each breath the king took weakened it further. Captain Rowan stood near the door. One hand pressed against the wound in his shoulder. "How far is the drowned crown?" he asked. 2 days if the sea allows us passage." The voice said before the next moonrise. "I heard it. That gives us less than one." Liora looked toward the small window. Valor's ships had separated from the fleet, but she did not believe he had fled toward the capital. Men like Valor did not abandon plans. They changed them. Rowan followed her gaze. "He controls 5 vessels. The council ships may follow him. He will follow us." "Why?" "Because he knows what the drowned crown can prove." Rowan's expression hardened. "And what can it prove?" "That the royal bloodline survived because mine was destroyed." Silence settled between them. Cassian stirred. His hand closed weakly around Liora's wrist. His eyes opened, dark and unfocused. "Where is Valor?" "Gone." Cassian tried to sit up. Pain forced him back. "He will reach the capital. He is not sailing east." "How do you know?" "Because he does not want your throne while the truth still exists." Cassian's gaze sharpened. "The drowned crown?" "Yes." He looked at Rowan. "Double the watch. No signal fires. No lanterns after sunset." Rowan bowed and left. Liora pulled her wrist from Cassian's hand. "You should not be giving commands. I am still king. Your wolf is dying. So is my kingdom." The answer was so controlled that it almost sounded cold, but the bond between them, damaged, ancient, and not yet fully formed, carried the truth beneath it. He was afraid, not of death, of leaving the kingdom to Valor. Liora stood. "Rest." Cassian's eyes remained on her. "You saw my memories." "Yes." "You saw Seraphine, the promised northern Luna who had tried to poison him." Liora remembered the young woman kneeling in the throne room, confessing that the council had threatened her family. Cassian had let her leave alive. Valor had murdered her before she could reveal the conspiracy. "You believed her betrayal proved no one could be trusted," Liora said. "It proved love could be turned into a weapon." "She did not love you, I know." His voice carried no bitterness, only exhaustion. "That made it worse." Liora understood before he explained. Seraphine had been chosen by the council because Cassian wanted nothing from her. No tenderness, no trust, no vulnerability. A political union seemed safe. Even that had become a blade. Cassian looked toward the scars around Liora's wrists. I saw you in the infirmary months before the trial. I remember. You told me dying men needed your courage more than kings needed your fear. You left without answering. Ridian recognized you. Liora's pulse shifted because he carried my mother's final breath. Perhaps. The word held something dangerous. She looked at him. Cassian's eyes had lowered to her mouth. For one breath, the cabin became too small. Then pain seized him. His body arched. A broken growl tore from his throat. Black fur flashed along his arms and vanished. Liora caught his shoulders. Do not fight the shift. I am not calling it. Ridian was trying to emerge without his command. The wolf was searching for her. Liora pressed both hands against Cassian's chest and began the tide song her mother once used to calm frightened wolves. Blue light moved between her finger. Cassian's breathing slowed. His hand covered hers. The contact sent a sharp pulse through the hidden bond. Liora felt his guilt, not the distant regret of a king admitting failure, the raw memory of her falling backward from the execution deck, the moment he almost ordered the soldiers to stop, the silence that came instead. She tore her hand away. Cassian flinched as though she had struck him. You felt it, he said. Yes, I was going to stop them, but you did not. No. The answer came without defense. That made anger harder to hold cleanly. Liora moved toward the door. I entered the sea because I failed you, Cassian said. She stopped. That was not why. He looked at her. You entered because Ridian forced you to feel what your judgment had ignored. Pain crossed his face. She continued. Do not turn one brave act into absolution. You are not forgiven because you finally risked what I had already lost. I know. Do you? Yes. His voice broke on the single word. Liora turned back. Cassian sat against the cabin wall, stripped of crown, armor, and command. He looked younger, not softer, only exhausted by the weight of truths he had refused to touch. I do not want absolution, he said. I want the chance to become someone who would have stopped them. Liora's anger remained, but beneath it, something dangerous began to move. Hope. She left before it could grow. The sea changed by midday. The sky cleared, but the water darkened to the color of black glass. No birds crossed above them. No fish moved beneath the surface. The night sovereign entered forbidden western waters. Every compass spun uselessly. Stars appeared in the daylight, shining beneath the waves instead of above them. Sailors whispered that the ship had crossed into the dead. Liora stood at the bow. The sea wolf that had first awakened her surfaced beside the vessel. The Land King is breaking, it said inside her mind. I know. His wolf carries the final breath of Saras Avalun, my mother. When she saved him, she gave more than air. She placed a living memory within the royal beast. If Ridian dies before the bond is restored, her final memory will vanish. Liora gripped the railing. What memory? The wolf's eyes held hers. The name of the man who ordered the Tide bloodline destroyed. Cassian's father. No. Hold spread through her. Valar's father. No. The sea wolf sank slightly. The man who ordered the massacre still lives. Before Liora could demand more, warning bells rang. Ships appeared on the eastern horizon. 3. Valar had found them. Battle stations, Rowan shouted. Cassian emerged onto the deck wearing black armor over his fevered body. Liora crossed toward him. You should be below. You should stop saying that. You cannot shift. I still possess a sword. Valar's vessels gained speed, though no wind filled their sails. Blue-black runes burned along their hulls. Liora recognized the magic. Temple Stormox. Cassian looked toward her. Mivra. She is with him. The first enemy arrow struck the deck. Then, hundreds followed. Soldiers raised shields. Sails tore. A sailor fell beside Liora with an arrow through his throat. Cassian reached her before the next volley, covering her with his body. She pushed him away. Protect your men. I am. I am not the only life on this ship. His eyes flashed. You are the one Valar came to kill, and you are the one he came to replace. Another ship slammed into their port side. Wood exploded. Hooks flew over the railing. Valor's soldiers climbed aboard. Cassian drew his sword. The wounded king became terrifyingly precise. He cut down the first attacker, turned another blade, and drove his shoulder into a third man. He moved without wolf strength, relying on skill forged through years of war. Liora seized a fallen spear. She did not possess his training, but she knew how to survive. A soldier rushed her. She stepped aside and drove the spear shaft into his knee. Edrin, the young sailor who had helped chain her, struck the man from behind. Their eyes met. "I questioned," he said breathlessly. Liora understood. He had chosen whom obedience served. A silver arrow crossed the deck. It struck Cassian beneath the shoulder. He staggered. Liora ran to him. The arrowhead carried moon temple poison. Dark veins spread instantly around the wound. On the neighboring ship, Valor lowered his bow. "Give me the tide, woman," he shouted. "I may still permit you to die with your crown." Cassian broke the arrow shaft. "You murdered 300 sailors. I prevented 30,000 deaths. You murdered Seraphine." Valor's face changed, only slightly, but Cassian saw it. Liora felt the truth through the bond. Cassian had suspected. Now he knew. Valor smiled. She was going to confess who sent her. Cassian's expression became something Liora had never seen. Not rage. Grief sharpened into purpose. "She was afraid," he said. "She was weak. No, she was trapped." Another arrow flew. Liora raised her hand. Water tore upward from the sea and caught it. Every soldier paused. Liora stared at her own fingers. The sea had answered more quickly this time, but the power carried something with it. Whispers, memories within the ship. She placed her palm against the deck. The Night Sovereign screamed beneath her touch. Images rushed through her blood. Black trees growing inside flooded courtyards, sacred tide runes carved into living wood, soldiers cutting those trees down after the massacre. Cassian's father had built the Night Sovereign from the remains of the drowned crown. The king's greatest warship was constructed from her family's ruined sanctuary. Liora's grief became fury. The ship remembered every blade, every fire, every body carried away. She pressed both hands against the deck. "Wake." Blue light burst through every seam. The mast became silver. The wolf carved into the bow opened its eyes. Enemy hooks released themselves. Ropes turned to streams of water. The Night Sovereign rose beneath them like a living beast and surged forward without wind. It struck Valor's ship broadside. Soldiers screamed as wood shattered. The forbidden reef appeared ahead. Black stone rose from the sea in an unbroken wall. Waves crashed against it with enough force to destroy any vessel. "There is no passage," Rowan shouted. "There was," Liora answered. "Before they buried it." She began to sing. The sound did not come only from her throat. It came from the awakened wood beneath their feet. The reef split. Water rose into towering walls, revealing a narrow path through darkness. The Night Sovereign entered. Valor's ships followed. Inside the reef, the world changed. Ancient towers descended beneath the water. Bridges of pale stone crossed blue depths. Statues of wolves stood along roads swallowed by the sea. At the center of the ruins waited a circular island. A black throne rose from it, covered in shells and broken silver chain. The drowned crown. The Night Sovereign struck the shore. Liora helped Cassian onto the island. His weight leaned heavily against her. Moon temple poison darkened his blood, and Rydian's presence had become almost silent. Valor's ships entered behind them. Soldiers poured onto the island. High Priestess Maevra walked at their center, silver robes untouched by battle. She carried a ceremonial blade marked with the same severing runes as Liora's chain. "You bless the execution," Liora said. "I protected the kingdom. You protected a lie." Maevra looked almost sorrowful. "Truth is not sacred when it destroys order." Valor approached with his sword drawn. Cassian tried to stand alone. His knees failed. Liora caught him. The black throne awakened beneath her touch. A voice moved through the ruins. "Blood of tide. Blood of crown. One debt may be restored. One must be paid." Cassian looked at Liora. "What does it require?" The throne answered. "The Land King must return what his bloodline stole." Cassian's hand tightened around hers. "My life?" The water shook. His wolf. Liora felt Rydian recoil inside him. To restore the ancient tide bond, Cassian had to surrender his wolf willingly to the sea. He would live, but he would become a wolfless king. Valor heard the judgment. A slow smile crossed his face. Without Rydian, Cassian would lose the legal right to rule. Every alpha in the kingdom could challenge him. Every soldier might abandon him before they left the island. Cassian looked toward the enemy army surrounding the drowned crown. Then he looked at Liora. Take him. Her breath stopped. No. If Rydian dies inside me, your mother's final memory dies with him. You will lose the throne. I have already watched a throne demand your death. Valor lifted his sword. Cassian placed Liora's blood-stained hand over his heart. If this is the price of returning what my family stole, then let the sea have it. Rydian appeared between them in spirit. The enormous black wolf emerged from Cassian's body, silver fractures shining across his weakened form. He turned once toward the army, then he lowered his head before Liora. Her hand trembled as she touched his muzzle. Behind her, the enemy archers raised their bows. Maevra lifted the ceremonial blade, and Valor whispered the order that would force Liora to choose between saving Cassian's wolf and saving Cassian's life. Kill them both. The first arrow flew before Liora could breathe. Captain Rowan moved faster than thought. He stepped in front of her, raised his shield, and took the impact hard enough to drive him to one knee. A second arrow struck the stone beside Cassian's hand. A third buried itself in the shoulder of a royal guard. Then the sky darkened with silver. Protect the Tidekeeper, Rowan roared. The remaining soldiers of the Night Sovereign closed around Liora and Cassian, shields locking together as Valor's archers released another volley. Metal screamed against metal. Men grunted beneath the force. One guard fell without a sound, and the line closed over his body. Inside the circle, Rydian's spirit stood between Cassian and the sea. The great wolf looked thinner than ever. Silver cracks divided his black body, and darkness leaked from them like smoke. Yet his eyes remained clear. Cassian's hand covered Liora's against his heart. Finish it. She stared at him. If I surrender Rydian to the sea, Valor will challenge you before the ritual is complete. Then I will meet him. You will be wolfless. I was a king before I understood the wolf inside me. No, Liora said, her voice breaking. You were made king because of him. Your laws, your army, your council, everything recognizes his strength. Cassian looked toward the soldiers dying around them. Then everything must learn to recognize something else. Another arrow broke against Rowan's shield. Valor's voice carried over the island. You cannot protect them forever. Lay down your weapons, and I will spare every man who renounces the king. Several royal guards flinched. Valor heard it. He stepped forward, his expression calm despite the ancient wolves stirring beneath the water. Look at him, he called. Cassian Draven brought you into forbidden waters for the woman who bewitched him. He has sacrificed ships, soldiers, and the crown's authority. Now he intends to surrender the wolf that gives his blood the right to rule. He pointed his sword toward Cassian. That is not loyalty. It is surrender disguised as honor. Liora felt doubt moving through the men around her. Not cowardice, fear. They had wives waiting at the capital. Children, parents. They had been raised to believe a wolfless ruler meant war, famine, and pack collapse. Valor understood that fear because he had spent years feeding it. Cassian released Liora's hand and stood. The moon temple poison still blackened the wound beneath his shoulder. Blood ran from his side. He had no armor covering his chest and no wolf strength left to hide the shaking in his legs. Yet when he stepped beyond the shield wall, every voice fell silent. Valor smiled. Will you finally yield? Cassian looked at the men who had followed him across battlefields. No soldier here owes me death merely because I was born above him. Rowan stared at the king. Cassian continued. Those who wish to leave may do so. No name will be taken. No family will be punished. No oath will be called broken. Valor's smile widened. He believed the line would collapse. Cassian lifted his voice. But know what you leave behind. Not a throne. Not a dying wolf. You leave the truth that 300 of your brothers were murdered so one man could make fear useful. Silence answered him. Cassian pointed toward Liora. You leave a woman your kingdom chained, struck, and drowned before giving her the dignity of being heard. And you leave, knowing that when power demanded another innocent life to preserve itself, you chose power. One soldier lowered his shield. For one terrible heartbeat, Liora believed he intended to walk away. Instead, he turned and faced Valo. My brother was aboard the Western Fleet. Another soldier moved beside him. Then Edrin stepped forward. He had blood across his face and one hand pressed over a wound in his rib. I helped place the chains around her, he said. I will not obey the man who forged them again. More shields turned. The protective circle did not break. It widened. Valor's expression hardened. Kill them. His archers released. The royal guards raised their shield. Liora placed both hands against Cassian's chest and began to sing. The drowned crown opened. Water rose around them in a spiral, carrying Rydian's spirit upward. The wolf did not resist. He looked once toward Cassian, and the bond between them flared so brightly that everyone on the island saw it. Liora felt their entire life together. Rydian waking inside a frightened boy who had lost his mother. Rydian standing between Cassian and a father whose anger always arrived before affection. Rydian carrying him through his first war. Rydian howling inside him when Seraphine betrayed him, then grieving when her body was found. Rydian recognizing Liora in the infirmary months before Cassian allowed himself to notice her. Rydian fighting the silver chain beneath the sea. Rydian spending his final strength because Liora's life mattered more than his survival. Tears filled her eyes. You were never his weakness, she whispered. The wolf pressed his forehead against her. Then he dissolved. Silver light flowed from his body into the sea. Cassian fell to his knees. His cry was not the roar of a king. It was the sound of a man losing the companion who had lived inside every heartbeat since childhood. Liora felt the emptiness through their broken bond. It was vast, the kind of emptiness that could consume a person if no one entered it. She reached for him. Before her fingers touched his face, an arrow struck her side. Pain exploded through her. The song broke. Rydian's spirit flickered halfway between Cassian and the sea. The ritual began tearing apart. Mavra lowered her bow. Forbidden blood cannot be allowed to bind the crown again. Liora pressed one hand over the arrow. Blood ran through her fingers. Cassian tried to rise, but Valor reached him first. The commander crossed the island and drove his boot into Cassian's chest, throwing him against the black throne. You gave it away, Valor said in disbelief. You truly surrendered the greatest royal wolf in the Eastern Kingdoms for her. Cassian coughed blood. No. Valor glanced toward Liora. Cassian forced himself upright. I surrendered him because he was never mine to preserve through murder. Valor struck him with the hilt of his sword. Cassian fell again. Liora tried to continue the song, but the arrow in her side burned with temple magic. Each word came out weaker. Maevra moved toward her with the ceremonial blade. You could have remained hidden, the priestess said. You could have lived quietly under another name. My family tried silence, and silence kept you alive. No, it only allowed your lie to live beside me. Maevra stopped within striking distance. You think revealing the past will heal this kingdom? No. Liora looked toward the frightened soldiers, the ancient ruins, and the man bleeding beside the throne. Truth does not always heal. Sometimes it cuts open everything that healed incorrectly. Maevra lifted the blade. Edrin stepped between them. The knife entered beneath his ribs. He gasped. Liora caught him as he fell. Maevra pulled the blade free. Edrin's blood spilled across Liora's blue gown. His eyes found hers. On the execution deck, he had been the frightened boy who obeyed. Now he was dying because he had chosen differently. Do not, Liora whispered. Stay with me. His lips moved. She leaned closer. Question, he breathed. Whom obedience serves? His body became still. Something inside Liora broke open. For years she had feared her power because everyone who discovered it died. She had hidden her name, silenced her memories, and made herself small enough to survive among people who praised obedience as virtue. Even after the sea wolves awakened, she had treated her blood as a danger that required permission. Edrin's blood crossed the black throne. Liora's followed. The drowned crown recognized both, not royal blood alone, blood freely given in defense of truth. A silver mark ignited over Liora's heart. It spread down her arms in luminous waves. The arrow in her side cracked apart. Her torn chains rose from the stone and transformed into circles of blue fire around her wrists. The ocean erupted. Thousands of sea wolves rose around the island. They climbed from the submerged roads and towers. Some were small enough to stand beside ordinary soldiers. Others towered above Valor's ships, their shoulders covered in moonlit scar, every weapon lowered. Aphamaifra stepped back. Liora rose with Edrin's blood upon her hand. The grief in her face frightened the priestess more than rage would have. "You will drown us all," Maevra whispered. Liora's eyes burned blue. "No." Her voice came from every wave. "I will make you remember." She lifted one hand. Memories filled the air, not distant pictures, living truth. Every person on the island felt Liora's mother pull a drowning child from the burning sea. They felt the blade enter her body. They felt Valor's father order Tide homes sealed before setting them on fire. They felt 300 sailors realize the storm had been created by their own commander. They felt Seraphine kneel before Valor after fleeing Cassian. "I will tell him everything," she said through tears. "He spared me." "You were not meant to survive his mercy," Valor answered. His sword crossed her throat. Cassian saw the memory. His face emptied. Valor turned toward the soldiers watching him. "She betrayed the crown." "No," Cassian said. He rose slowly beside the throne. "She trusted my mercy more than she feared your power." Valor's control broke. "You would have forgiven her." "Yes. That weakness would have destroyed the kingdom." "No." Cassian looked toward Liora. "My silence almost did." Valor shifted. The gray wolf exploded from his body, huge and battle-scarred. The beast lunged toward Cassian before anyone could move. Cassian had no wolf. He raised a fallen sword. The impact threw him across the stone. Valor's claws tore through his shoulder. Cassian rolled away before the jaws closed around his throat, but the wolf followed. Liora called the sea. A wall of water struck Valor and drove him back. Maevra rushed toward Liora with the ceremonial blade raised high. This time Captain Rowan stopped her. His sword entered her chest. The priestess stared down at it, shocked. "I protected order," she whispered. Rowan's face was filled with grief. "You protected whoever allowed you to define it." He lowered her body to the stone. Valor attacked Cassian again. The wolfless king met him with only steel and human strength. He cut across the wolf's muzzle, but Valor's paw struck his ribs and sent him crashing beside the water. The commander returned to human form, breathing heavily. He seized a silver spear. "Look at him," Valor shouted to the gathered packs. "A man without a beast, a king without the law. Challenge right gives me the crown." No one answered. Valor pointed the spear at Cassian. "Yield." Cassian pushed himself upright. "No, you will die for a woman who may never forgive you." Cassian looked toward Liora. His face held no expectation, no plea. "I am not dying to earn forgiveness." "Then why?" "So she never has to wonder whether I would remain silent again." Valor threw the spear. Liora reached for the tide. She was too far away. Cassian did not move. The weapon crossed the island. Then the sea wolves bowed, one after another. Thousands lowered their heads toward the wolfless king. The spear stopped in the air. The drowned crown spoke. "The debt of the land king is paid." Water wrapped around Cassian. The poison left his blood. His wounds closed enough for him to breathe. Valor stared at the kneeling wolves. "He has no beast," the ancient voice answered. "He surrendered inherited power rather than preserve it through injustice." The law of tide recognizes choice. Liora felt something awaken inside her, not the sea wolves. Something deeper, her own wolf. A blue-black she-wolf rose behind her, colossal and radiant, with broken chain markings around her legs. The creature had slept all Liora's life, trapped behind the severed bond between their bloodline. Cassian stared at her, the hidden connection between them open. Liora felt the choice waiting there, not prophecy, not death. A mate bond that could exist only if both accepted it. "If I restore the bond," she said, "our lives will remain connected." Cassian stepped toward her. "What will it cost you? If either of us uses it to dominate the other, both wolves may die. You owe me nothing, I know. If you choose me now, they will say you did it to keep me king." "I am not choosing the king." His guarded face changed. Liora saw the man beneath it. The man who had failed her. The man who entered the sea. The man who surrendered his wolf without knowing whether she would ever stand beside him. "I am choosing the man who finally placed truth above his right to power," she said. "Do not make me regret it." Cassian held out his hand. "I will spend the rest of my life proving you did not." She took it. The mate bond struck like lightning beneath the ocean. Silver and black power erupted from their joined hands. Every memory they had hidden opened between them. Cassian felt her terror as a child beneath the burning sanctuary. Liora felt his loneliness inside a throne room filled with men waiting for weakness. Neither pain disappeared. It became known. Water gathered around Cassian. A new wolf formed within it, not Rydian. Rydian belonged to the life Cassian inherited. This wolf belonged to the choice he had made. A vast black beast emerged, blue fire burning beneath its fur. It stood beside Liora's she-wolf, equal in height, their shoulders level beneath the moon. Valor shifted again and charged. Cassian met him. The wolves collided with a force that cracked the island. Valor fought with desperation, but Cassian and Liora moved through the living bond. When Valor turned toward her, Cassian blocked him. When he struck Cassian's wounded side, Liora drove him back. They did not fight as ruler and weapon. They fought as equals. Valor returned to human form near the edge of the water. He reached for a fallen knife. "Yield," Cassian commanded. Valor laughed. "You believe this changes what people are? They will blame her for every storm, every drowned child, every failed harvest. When your protection is no longer enough, they will burn her again." Liora approached. "Perhaps." Valor stared at her. "Fear does not die because truth appears," she said. "But now fear will not speak without being answered." She lifted her hand. One final memory opened. Valor as a boy, watching his father return from the Tide massacre. The elder commander knelt before him, armor covered in blood. "I did this so our family would never kneel to witches." Young Valor trembled. Did they deserve it? His father struck him. Deserving has nothing to do with survival. The memory vanished. Liora looked at the man that frightened boy had become. "You spent your life becoming the lesson that hurt you." Valor's face twisted. "Do not pity me." "I do not." He lunged. Cassian caught his wrist. Captain Rowan placed a blade against his throat. Valor's soldiers lowered their weapon. For the first time, the commander looked afraid, not of death, of being remembered correctly. They returned to Stormfang beneath two banners, the Silver Crown and the Blue Wolf rising from waves. The capital gathered at the harbor expecting monsters. Instead, they saw Valor and the surviving conspirators in chains. The council accused Liora of controlling Cassian. The old laws declared a Tide mate forbidden. Lord Heron demanded that Cassian renounce her or surrender the crown. Cassian removed the silver circlet from his head. He placed it upon the harbor stone. "I will not surrender the throne for Liora," he said. Pain struck her before he finished. Then he looked at the crowd. "I will surrender it because any throne requiring her humiliation is unworthy of us both." The harbor fell silent. Captain Rowan placed his sword at Cassian's feet. "My oath belongs to the man who refused to preserve power through murder." One by one, soldiers followed. Then Edrin's brother stepped from the crowd. He held a small journal. "My brother wrote one sentence before the battle." He looked toward the royal guard. Question: whom obedience serves? Weapons lowered. Pack leaders began kneeling. Liora stopped them. "I do not ask you to kneel to my blood." She cut her palm and let the blood fall into the harbor. Silver names spread across the water. Thousands of Tide dead. Her mother, her father, children whose existence had been erased. "I ask you to remember what was done in your name." Weeks later, a new covenant was read at the Black Harbor. The hereditary council was dissolved. The Moon Temple lost the power to condemn bloodlines. The Tide Sanctuary was restored. No prisoner could be executed by royal command alone. Cassian stood without a crown. Liora stood beside him, her chain scars uncovered. The silver circlet rested in a basin of seawater. Cassian lifted it and offered it to her. She took it. Then she lowered it into the sea. The crowd gasped. Blue light changed the old symbols, weaving waves around the royal wolf. The crown rose again. Liora and Cassian held it between them. "One crown must never stand above the truth that sustains it," she said. Some packs knelt, others did not. Liora was grateful. Forced loyalty would only create another beautiful lie. That night, she returned to the execution vessel. The sea was calm beneath the moon. She stood at the railing where the soldiers had pushed her into darkness. Cassian approached quietly. "For 3 nights," she said. "I believed no one would come." His voice was rough. "I should have come before you fell." "Yes." He accepted the answer. "But you came after. I will regret the difference for the rest of my life." "Good." Surprise crossed his face. Liora touched the scars around her wrists. "Regret should not destroy you. It should keep you honest." Cassian stepped closer. "And what will keep you honest?" "You." That sounds dangerous. It is. He touched her cheek and waited. Only when she leaned into his hand did he lower his forehead to her. I love you. No command lived in the word, no prophecy, no demand for forgiveness. Liora felt the truth of them through the bond. She kissed him beneath the same moon that once watched her drown. Far below, ancient sea wolves carried the memories of the dead through silver currents. Her mother's name lived in the harbor. Edrin's name stood beside those who had chosen truth too late, but not too late to matter. When Liora drew back, she looked toward the dark horizon. She had been cast into the sea as the last daughter of a disgraced bloodline. She returned as its living memory, not because a king chose her, because she chose herself, and because the man beside her finally understood that loving her meant honoring that choice. Before you leave, tell us in the comments, did Cassian truly earn Liora's forgiveness? Or would you have walked away from him forever? The ocean had not given Liora a throne. It had returned her name. And this time, no king, priestess, or commander would ever drown it again.